Here at SEC Media Days, of course, with the great Billy Liucci from Tex Aggs. And Liucci, Texas A&M on day number 1. We'll get to the players. We'll get to the offense. You and I have been talking about this, it feels like, for years now. But Fisher, Jimbo Fisher, it's like he just can't stop talking sometimes. And, everyone's going to get stuck on the whole, hopefully he's calling plays. Is that just Jimbo being Jimbo, people making too much of it? Or, is he actually trying to keep something from everybody?
Bobby Petrino is going to call plays. I'm absolutely convinced of that. I've talked to many people about it. I think Jimbo's excited about it. I think he's very excited about the hire, the addition of Petrino, the addition of Jim Chaney, what it's allowed him to do this spring. I think he loved coaching the way he was able to coach this spring. I also think he's going to be heavily involved in the offense. You don't think those three, they're going into the lab, man, every day, along with James Coley, who's been an OC at, Miami and Georgia. I think they're having a lot of fun. He's having a lot of fun coaching offense and sitting in the room with a couple guys that like talking about it and diving into it as much as he does. At some point, it'll never change. Don't we get to a point where you know how someone's personality is, and and in my opinion, I could be wrong, that if you feel like you're being challenged daily by a group in the media that haven't spent the whole bunch of time in the last couple of years writing very good things about you, and then they're trying to hey, Coach, can you tell us how the offense with you running it only scored this many points last year, and tell us how, you have to step back. I get where you're going to be standoffish and you're going to not want to give in, even though I also understand by just saying, yeah, here's how we're going to do it, da-da-da. I don't really see what that would hurt, and it would quiet it all down. But I think it's gotten to a point where, guys, we know Jimbo. When do you think if you ask the question for the 107th time versus the 106, you're going to get another answer? And then we all sit here and talk about it after the fact. And, yeah, do I wish he would just say something and be done just so we didn't have to do this? Yeah. Am I at all thinking that it's going to be status quo for them offensively and Bobby Petrino's a figurehead? Hell no.
Well, and, again, that's why I didn't want to say, was that real? The question is, why – if you know Jimbo enough, he just sometimes talks, and my wife will tell you that I've done that plenty of times before. So it just happens. I guess the key is, Anaya Smith talked a little bit about how different the offense is going to be, and he kind of just said, look, it's going to be different. We can't really tell you how different. I'm assuming that includes things like tempo. Bobby Petrino always had a power rushing attack no matter where he's been. He's always played off of the power rushing attack. So is there any – do you have any – now that Media Days is here, are there any – again, same things you and I have talked about, but I'm curious if you think there's anything you can pinpoint in terms of what it's going to look like differently, tempo. What are the things that are going to be different with the collection of players, new quarterback, new offensive line back, all that stuff?
I think you're talking about things like tempo, different types of motion, setting things up, the progression of those plays. People forget. Here's what everybody wanted. A&M fans wanted Jimbo to hire out of the chute Garrett Riley. What had just happened at TCU, and I think it's a great hire for Clemson. I think those are the two best hires. Bobby Petrino, Bama's over here hiring Reese. South Carolina, I like Kentucky's hire, but Bobby Petrino, what he's done as a coach, and by the way, people want to point out Missouri State. They don't understand the history of Missouri State or the lack thereof and what they did under him. I think that the biggest difference is going to be that schematically, and you mentioned the power run game, the use of the tight ends, they're very like-minded. I think the world of Garrett Riley. He hadn't done it on the big stage very long. Had Jimbo hired him, not knowing really anything about him, I think as soon as push comes to shove on a Saturday, an SEC game, he's taking it back. I don't think that's the case with Bobby. He's coached against Bobby. He saw Petrino scored 63 on them at Florida State, at Louisville. He knows what Jim Chaney is, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Purdue. So I think this was the way Jimbo needed to do it to get the most out of it and to be all in. So schematically and philosophically, they're similar. I think what comes now are the different ideas. You mentioned the tempo. I think maybe the verbiage to get plays, the speed and processes of which to get plays in quicker to avoid, delay a game after a kickoff or coming out of a timeout to get that tempo going. So I think it's more that than it will be anything else.
I want to ask you about kind of the state of Texas and Texas and Oklahoma coming in, because that's like everywhere. And, of course, every Aggie player was asked about it, and Smith threw some horns down, which clearly should not be a penalty. But I think I'm just curious in the West, like if I look at, and not even just the West, I could include Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina in this conversation. There's such a healthy middle class. A&M has the best players of any team in that middle class. And if I said to you, like, which teams bubble up to the surface of that middle class, challenge LSU, Georgia, Alabama as that top tier, like, you can include A&M in this, but I genuinely want your opinion on who else you think, like, who are the teams from a very crowded 8 or 9 or 10 team field that you think actually bubble up to the top and are challenging the top three?
It's a good question. I think A&M would be in that. A&M's ceiling, I think, is that of like one of these New Year's 6, 10-2 with a chance to go 11-2 type thing. I think that's their, you look at their schedule, they can beat anybody they play. Problem is, there's a lot of them they could lose to on an off day too, and you're going to have those off days in the SEC. The question is A&M, can they overcome off days? Because that goes beyond talent. And then you come into quarterback play, culture. So that'll be the tell. This year, I like the sound of Kentucky. Do you too?
No, I do too. And Cole Kubelik, there's a lot of people are all kind of like, you got the quarterback, you got the coordinator, you got pretty good skill weapons. Stoops is going to fix the defense. You're the one answering here, so I'll let you go.
No, I wanted to hear you because I like I like their OC hire coming back. I'm not fully bought in on South Carolina. Beamer's one of my favorite coaches in the league. I root for him. I'm not fully bought in. I know they beat a down A&M team barely when A&M spotted them 17 on the road. Loved what they did against Tennessee and Clemson, but I don't know. I don't want to call it fool's gold because they just kicked their ass and outplayed them. I just think we're getting a year ahead on that rebuild or construction project. If I'm picking a second one, I'm not all in on Arkansas. I love Jefferson. I like Jefferson. I don't love. If I'm picking a second one, is it Ole Miss?
This is what I'm saying. Like, Tennessee, pretty good. Ole Miss, pretty good. Arkansas, pretty good. Auburn's going to be better. Mississippi State's got a bunch of seniors, but they're changing. Like, who's it going to be?
I'll go with Ole Miss for just some reason. They have experience at QB. I don't think Jackson Dart played well against A&M. I saw a lot of games where he didn't. Great running game out of that spread, but they also got whooped up on a few times down the stretch. I think it's a very crowded, like you said. There's like an upper middle class that's really crowded. And that's a great question. You start looking at it and you go, who has the most talent? Who has the least amount of holes? And A&M certainly might be the first that comes to mind, but at the same time you got to go, well, but they did lose 7 games last year for a reason, so we have to see it. But I think, if they can get quarterback play, then that team's A&M.
I have gone round and round on the West. I feel like A&M's the one because of the players. I think Tennessee has a high floor because the offense just automatically is going to give them 38 especially against teams that they have better players than. And then Kentucky, I think, is the one where, like, if they get it all right, it could all be really, really special. So I lived for 6 years in Texas. You've lived your whole life in Texas, and obviously next year SEC Media Day is going to be in Dallas, which is pretty cool for the state of Texas and for Oklahoma and Texas to join the league. And The Aggie players in particular got asked about what's it like, but not just them. Everyone's being asked. Every player at LSU is being asked about this on day number 1, which is just sort of like, what is it? Are they ready for it? What is it going to be like? How excited are you for it? And I know as a kid in middle school going to Texas A&M games, like just how much that means to people. And I still don't think people fully grasp what it means to have these two teams back together that are not aware of it. And do you have any like anecdotes from childhood? Like, is there a story you can tell that like tries to illustrate to a Missouri fan, or I guess maybe Missouri's a bad example, they might actually understand it, but a South Carolina fan or a Tennessee fan or a Kentucky fan who just doesn't get what this thing means to people?
They just added 2 of the 3 biggest rivalries in the SEC. I don't care what anybody says. You got the Iron Bowl. I know the cocktail party. I know Tennessee, Bama. I don't care. They added the league just went Texas A&M, Texas OU, and the Iron Bowl are now the 3 biggest rivalries. And the Egg Bowl is up there as well. But I believe 2 of the 3 biggest. When you start playing A&M and Texas again, it's why I went to A&M. I was going to A&M or Texas. I didn't care. I was going to go study engineering. They're both really good. They're both within a couple hours of Houston, where I grew up. I went to Bonfire. The year before, I saw A&M go for 2 with Bucky Richardson in the win in Austin and lose. Went to Bonfire a couple days later. I'm watching the game on TV with the family friends that were all Longhorns. And Marcus Buckley pick 6 on the first play of the game for the Aggies at Kyle Field. Place was going nuts. I had so much fun at the Bonfire. I said, I should have been at that game. And I said, I love that place. I want to go. Lived with Dan Campbell when he gave the Bonfire speech a few years later. That was, just the craziness of all that. I was there helping with a lot of the A&M football team. My roommates at the time moved logs off the Bonfire when it fell. In Texas, and Mac Brown were so incredible that week in terms of how they handled the loss and the game and everything. So I've got a million stories down on the field before a game when one of the late great A&M players, Chris Dowson, the band tried to block the A&M player's path to the locker room, and he shoved down about 20 band members. Back when you could do something like that without everyone crying about it on Twitter. You got knocked down, get your ass back up. Sorry your trumpet got bent. But things like that, and saying some things that I probably can't say on air and you never could, but that was the rivalry. I remember Texas players dancing on the field. I remember the Aggies dancing on the Longhorn logo the following year. I love that it's coming. I had no desire to play them when they were in the Big 12. They needed the life raft, get that home game every other year that mattered. Their home schedule stinks in the Big 12 without OU. Why help them? Especially when they canceled the rivalry when you left for the SEC out of pettiness. Now they're all coming. None of them will admit that A&M made the smart decision 11, 12 years ago. But now that they're here, I'm like, let's get that game going. It's going to be incredible for the state of Texas. It's going to be incredible for the Aggies, incredible for the Longhorns, and the conference.
And Oklahoma. I think I was there in Austin in sixth. It would have been 6th and 8th grade. And I want to say in 95, 96, it was like a 56-10. It was Ricky Williams, Priest Holmes, and like all in the same backfield. And like you just learn about college. I mean, I'm not kidding. I learned how to cuss at a Texas-Oklahoma game with the Stony stand in Dallas. Like I was 12 years old, and my dad's like, "Stop listening to the crowd." That's just what it means to all the different parts of it, and to have it in the state. Last one, and I'm asking everybody this, and I'll let you go. And I appreciate your time. TexAgs, of course, is the website. Make sure you check it out. Georgia. Anybody beat them? Can they handle the noise? Last year they were disrespected, quote unquote. I actually could make the case that they were. They weren't picked to win it. They were picked number 3. They had their quarterback back. All these things, Now they don't have any of that stuff and a bunch of noise. So the question is it the SEC regular season schedule? Is it the championship game? Is it the playoff? Where do they get got, and how, or does it not happen at all?
I want to say they get got in the championship game by a better quarterback by But here's the thing. So instead, what I'm going to go with is the field. I'm going to take the field of that whole schedule. I'm going to say Georgia loses one. I don't know who it is. I know they should have lost. Shouldn't have almost lost to Missouri last year. A game like that they lose. Bama at A&M a couple of years ago. I think they lose one, and I think they win. They three-peat. I think they win the whole thing.
That's the first three-peat we've had so far on the show this week. So everybody's picking a loss in the playoff, which I think is, they almost happened last year. So the key is who around college football has the formula. We shall see. Luch, appreciate you, man. Always a pleasure. Thanks for listening, everybody. Of course, we do appreciate it here from SEC Media Days in 2023, Nashville, Tennessee. Appreciate it, guys.